Hello and welcome to another episode of
Absolute Game of Nerd!
I just found that for the first time. Every time I've done this without JP, I never knew where that was, and I just found it. Yes, another episode of Absolute Game of Nerds. As you noticed, JP is not here. He had a client event come up, and so we actually have last week's guest, Dan. Dansxmencomics graciously joined us again to guest co-host with me today. And today we have another great guest. We have Brian, a.k.a. Bigby McFly, the comic guy. I met Brian via kind of the group we've all started this text thread with that we just literally talk about comics all day. It's fantastic. I also learned Bigby. Oh, and I think I was first introduced to Bigby by Mike from Lunch Money, and then also found out he's a fellow Northwesterner like Dan and myself. So Bigby, say hello.
Hello.
How's it going? Right on. Let's get into it. We always start with the origin story, way back, whatever it is that it all started. Why don't you go ahead and tell us the story of how it all began?
Comics for me started when I was a little kid, probably 5 or 6 years old. My parents used to go to a lot of like flea markets and swap meets, and they would buy comics for me. And I started amassing quite a bit of comics. And at some point, they told me they weren't going to buy me any more comics until I learned to read. So I really quickly learned to read because of comics. So yeah, so there's that. And some of the first comics I can remember are like ASM 161, 162, the ones with Spider-Man, Nightcrawler, and the Punisher.
Oh yeah.
First appearance of Jigsaw.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jigsaw's in that. I know.
Yeah, I was like, why is Spider-Man teaming up with the devil? I don't understand. And like the Neil Adams Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes giant size big book. I had that when I was a kid. Really liked that artwork in there. It was pretty amazing. So
do you still have any of these books that your parents bought you when you were 5, 6 from the beginning?
No, those got totally destroyed and trashed and loved to oblivion.
That's good. I mean, good, but I also think it's cool sometimes when people have those original comics. So started from 5 or 6. Has it been nonstop? Has there been breaks? Like, tell me about like.
Yeah, there was breaks, and I wasn't really collecting for myself until what year was it? 1984. I saw this book on the newsstand.
What do we got?
G.I. Joe,
G.I. Joe.
26. I was like, what? They're going to tell the origin of Snake Eyes? I'm in.
I did love Snake Eyes, but I never collected the G.I. Joe comic books, but I did love the cartoon. I love Snake Eyes. I love Storm Shadow.
Yeah, so that is the beginning. Actually, on the cover there, you've got there's Stalker, and that's Storm Shadow in the middle, and Snake Eyes in the hat over there.
All right.
So in Vietnam. So yeah. But yeah, pretty cool book.
So I take it you probably had the natural breaks when a lot of us did. You probably grew up a little bit, got distracted with other things, and then what brought you back?
From progressing from that, like I think I told this story on a couple of times on other places, but I was kind of a natural hustler. I would try to make money as a kid wherever I could, and I would go to Costco and buy the big packages of bubble gum.
Okay.
And sell bubble gum during my classes, and sometimes trade them for comic books. And so one of the first X-Men issues I ever got, X-Men 175.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
And I got it because I was going to trade it to a buddy of mine. I wasn't into X-Men. And he's like, I already have it. And I was like, oh. He's like, well, read it. You might like it. And I read it, and I was hooked. And then I think 193 was my first issue I picked up off the newsstand for X-Men going forward. So yeah, so then I had comic shops, actually. I owned 2 comic shops.
Yeah, I've heard you say that. Tell me about those.
So from middle of 1993 until 2008, there was a local shop I walked in, and one of the business partners was sitting on a upside down bucket playing a guitar. Half the inventory of the shop was gone. And I said, what happened? He said, my partner bailed on me. He's like, you want to buy the rest of the shop? He's like, $2,000, you can have everything, all the display cases, everything. I was like, hell yeah.
Wait, that was in 1993?
Yes. Yeah.
And then you owned that store till 2008?
Yes. Yeah.
Wait, so $2,000. But had you done anything in the comic world business wise besides hustling?
Oh yeah, since when I was a teenager, I used to go to all the Portland comic shows and set up a booth. We printed, buddies of mine printed our own comic books in the graphics department, did our art and everything, and printed our own comics and sold them at the Portland Comic Con. And I used to set up and sell also at the trading card shows. So yeah, I was versed in this buying and selling of comics and cards from that time, just going forward. And then luckily for me, right at that time, it was a bad time for comics, but right at that time, Magic the Gathering was just starting. And became insane. And so I was able to kind of roll off of that into surviving through the bad times of comics, and then rolled through that into the Pokemon era and everything, and then back into comics becoming back in vogue. And, and during that time, I opened a second store in Astoria, Oregon. So the first store was in Vancouver, Washington. Second store was in Astoria, Oregon.
So kind of like pop culture collectibles is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit of everything.
What was the name of the store?
Amazing Stories.
Amazing Story. I like that name. When you bought that half the shop for $2,000, any big notable books today that we'd be like, oh man, I can't believe you had that kind of thing?
Oh, actually, the comics half of it was gone.
Oh,
all that was left was sports cards and that kind of stuff. That was all I got. But I brought in the comics and the Magic cards and everything with me. So
did you like host like Magic tournaments and things like that there, or just sell the cards?
Oh yeah. It was something for sure. We went all the way through the whole gamut of hosting the Magic tournaments, the Pokemon tournaments, all that stuff. So and then oh, go ahead.
I would say in '93 when you walked into that shop, did you have a job at the time, or did that?
Yes, I did. I had a job. I worked for a factory. We made the interior parts for Freightliner trucks, and I used my artistic skills. I was the guy who, whenever the vinyl or anything would get damaged, I would go in and I would airbrush the vinyl and then use a heat press thing and put the creases back in to make it look like it hadn't been scratched or scarred in any way. And so I was using my art skills in some way.
So then you buy this comic shop for $2,000. You go in the next day and be like, I'm out.
No, I worked that job for another 2 years. So I was working, 80 hours a week between the two businesses. My friend Travis, who you guys know, Comics Limited, he helped me out. He would work in the store as well. I had a business partner, my lifelong friend Eric, who is no longer really into comics, but we're kind of, well, I say lifelong, but we don't really talk that much anymore. But I still consider him my friend. But yeah, he was my business partner for quite a while, and then he decided he wanted to cut ties and move along. And I got another business partner, and it was a thing.
So, and then what year did you open the second shop? And did you open it because it's going great? Let's see if we can maximize and do another one, kind of thing.
So the deal was, I am an artist, backtracking a little bit. I was accepted to the Joe Kubert School right out of high school. And a story I told on a different channel, that when they interviewed me for the Kubert School, I thought it was pretty funny because I sent my portfolio in, and the guy interviewing, he opens up my portfolio, and I guess he was interviewing for people who wanted to be professors at the school, as well as for new students. And he goes, which professorship position were you applying for? And I was like, I'm a student.
Real quick though, can you tell? I don't know what Dan. Do you know what the Joe Kubert School? I have no idea.
It sounds like a prestigious.
The Joe Kubert School is a school established by Joe Kubert to give young artists a firm foundation in a background in art, so they can succeed. A lot of really famous comic book artists go through that and learn the disciplines that are necessary to become successful in the biz. So
now, again, not knowing anything, I hear Kubert. I think Adam Kubert, Andy Kubert. Is there any relationship there?
Those are his sons. Yes.
Oh, okay. Look at that.
Yeah. So Joe's a Silver Age artist, and Andy and Adam are his sons. So Joe was really familiar for really famous for a lot of things like Tarzan, and he did a lot of jungle action kind of stuff and war comics. So real sketchy design.
Yeah, not a niche I've gotten into, so hence why I hadn't heard the name. But that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So then you did go to that school, then I take it.
No, I wanted to, but my background as a kid, I saw my parents struggle really heavily with debt, and I didn't want to go into debt to go to school in New York. So I figured I will get a job and save this money to go to school. And life happened. I met a girl, we had a baby and everything, and just kind of spiraled. And then eventually the whole thing happened where I got the opportunity to do the store. So
got it. So tell me about, I'm always very fascinated to hear about store owners and their life as a store owner. Like, talk to me about inventory. Like, how did you collections just come in, or did you go searching for them? Talk to me about that.
Most of the times collections would just come in. There was one time where, so we, at one point we moved locations to a bigger building. Our building had a big loading dock with a covered area. And one morning I came in and there was probably 100+ long boxes stacked on the loading dock. And
just
I'm like,
there.
And I'm like, what are these doing here? And nobody can answer. So the building had an attic. I'm like, I have no idea what the deal is with these. So we put them in the attic for a year and nobody ever came. So all we can assume is somebody just donated them. They didn't want them anymore.
Nice pickup.
Yeah, just crazy stuff like that would happen. We had a fella drive down. He showed up in a army truck, and he had a bunch of photocopy paper boxes in the back, and he said, my CEO told me to come down here. We're remodeling the barracks downtown. He said, I'm not supposed to waste any time haggling or anything. I need to get a check from you for $100 for a donation to the fund for families of soldiers who are overseas. And I was like, I opened the first box, and the top of it was Silver Age Fantastic Four issues. And I was like, open the next box, it was all Silver Age war books. And I was like, how about I write you a check for $200?
Wow.
That's so how often would collections come in then?
Back then it wasn't all that often. I would say maybe 2 or 3 times a month somebody would walk through the door with a collection of books. And then we'd have crazy stuff happen. I think you saw me post the other day, that's when I said I used to have one of those when somebody posted Hulk #1.
Yeah. I think that was me that posted that Hulk #1.
I came into work one day, and my employee said there's a brown paper bag sitting on the counter, and he says, you need to look at what's in this bag. And I'm like, what is it? And he goes, just look. And I opened it up, and on the top of the bag was an Incredible Hulk #1.
Wow.
And underneath that was a Flash 123. Underneath that was multiple copies of the Wolverine miniseries. There were but the big one was the Hulk #1, right? So I was just like, I'm like, oh my God. And I go, what happened? And he goes, this old lady came in with this bag, and she said, I told my husband we're moving again and we're not hauling this crap somewhere else. So take it. And he's like,
another free donation then, essentially.
He's like, my boss won't be in until, for another couple hours. I can't really give you a price. He said, no, just take it. And he's like, I'm like, this belonged to her husband. So again, we just stuck it up in the attic, and we left it up there for a year. And after that, we were like, well, I guess it's ours, man.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
Now,
give him the opportunity to claim his property again.
Yeah, I didn't want to just put it out for sale immediately. And that was a book that I was like, all right, that's going to my PC. Well, then one day a guy came in and he's like, do you have any real early Marvel Silver Age? And I was like, yeah, I've got a Hulk #1. And at the time he's like, I'd be interested in seeing it. And at the time, I think like high book on a Hulk #1 was maybe like $5,000, something like that.
This is what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you what the price was. Yeah.
And this one was probably like maybe a 3 to a 4. And he's like,
was this late 90s?
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I'll give you $1,200 for it. And I was like, well, that'll pay the bills for a while. So,
See,
you gotta detach yourself from the PC when you're.
This is why I don't think I would be a successful comic book businessman, because like I'd be like, like I'm keeping this one. Like there needs to be too much that would come in. I'd be like, well, that one I'm gonna keep.
No, I had a kid who would come in. He'd look at all the card packs on the wall, and he'd be like, how do you not open all of those? And
exactly.
Because I want to stay in business, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's something that I want to touch on. Like, how do you decide for sure that this is something you're willing to get rid of or keep? Because I used to kind of feel like if I love it, I have to keep it until I replace it. But then I kind of realized the things that I love are really easy to come by compared to like a Hulk one, right? And so,
right.
But for
So
you,
as a businessman,
you
you've
have
just
a
got to
business.
you've got to make ends meet, right? So
Are you just
you've got to detach yourself, and somebody interviewed me back when I had the business, and they said Brian got into the business, the hobby business, because he loves comics and games. Now he does very little of either one. It was kind of sad. It kind of ruined things for me a little bit. I mean, I got to read everything that came out, but there was just a lot of the passion for the hobby was kind of destroyed during that time period for me.
I mean, I feel like you hear about that with a lot of different like passions that become jobs. Like it kind of, cuts into that kind of side of things. So I'm not surprised to hear that. Let's just say when the stores closed, were there any books that you still had that you were like,
we didn't close the stores. We sold the stores.
Okay.
So sold the stores. I held on to all of the Silver Age inventory back. Anything that was older than silver, silver or older, I kept, and a lot of the nice bronze stuff. Unfortunately, like several years later, my family had a hardship where we needed some money really badly, and it was during the housing crisis, and nobody was willing to buy anything. And oops,
there you are.
There you are. What did I say last?
You said during the housing crisis, no one was willing to buy anything, and then you cut out.
And I went to a shop to Excalibur in Portland.
Yes.
And he said, "Well, I know a guy." And I was like, "You know a guy?" And he's like, "I know a guy. He might not like what he has to say." He goes, his last name is Sharky. I was like, okay. And so I had just picked up an X-Men #1, like a month prior, and it was probably a 7.5. And I went to see this guy, and he said, and I only needed, I think it was like $2,000 or $3,000, like $2,500, somewhere in that range amount of money. And
the Excalibur shop though, they didn't want to buy any of this stuff.
No, at the time they were like, we just bought a huge Golden Age collection. We don't have the money to buy anything. And so I like comics. I showed it to Chris, and he was like, "Oh my God, it's an amazing book. I don't have any money though." And
dude, just speaking of which, I've only met Chris of I Like Comics at a couple shows he's been at. Dude, those guys I was just kind of surprised because like those guys now, all they carry, I feel like, is just like monsters.
Yeah.
Like
when you walk in, they have a way to display just like everything, like all their best stuff right as you enter their shop too. It's awesome.
So I Like Comics is the remains of my 2 stores.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
do you go back in to just kind of reminisce?
It was real rough to go in there for a while. It was painful. So the Sharky guy looked at everything and he goes, "Well, I'll give you the money you need." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "For everything." And so I had to sell him everything, and that was it. I was out of comics.
Like you had no more left.
No, I had a couple graphic novels. That was it, and I was out.
I imagine not just physically out of inventory, but also emotionally, probably drained.
Yeah, it hurt. It was painful. I had just started kind of getting the passion back for collecting and everything, and it just was so crushing. And I was just like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was completely out. And then I ran into, it was like 2019. I walked into a game store I was playing Magic the Gathering at, and they had probably close to 100 long boxes of comics sitting on the tables. And I was like, what is going on? You guys don't do comic books. What's going on with this? And then they said one of the owner's friends passed away. He lived near the Tri-Cities area, and the shops up there offered his wife $10 a long box for his comics. And he said, I'll do better than that. And he brought him, he paid her whatever he paid her. And he had somebody else look through. I started to walk over to the boxes and they said, don't bother. Someone else who's a professional has looked through and taken all the good books out. All the keys are gone. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I sat down to play my Magic games, and I won my first round pretty quickly. And I walked over to the box and I flipped open the box, and the first book that I flipped to was this one.
Oh, nice.
Which is like $125 book. Yeah. And I looked over at the counter and I said, how much are the comics again? And they said, oh, I believe they said they were $2 a piece or 7 for $10. And I was like, all right, I'm dropping out of the tournament. And I had a whole bunch of credit. I used to do pretty well in the tournament, so I had a lot of credit saved up. And I was like, and I used up all my credit. I think I walked out of there with like 3 short boxes of comics. And they're like, as I'm leaving there, did we screw up? And I'm like, yeah, kind of.
I was just saying, so there were plenty of keys left.
Yes. And I said, just out of curiosity, what did the guy, the expert, take out? And they said, oh, just a second, we'll show you. And they came back, he pulled out 3 books. He pulled out the first Deadpool, the first Cable. Was it first Deadpool, first Cable? I think first Rogue. Okay. Were the 3 books he pulled out. The rest, everything else was, so there was like a full run of Watchmen in there. There was the full end of G.I. Joe, which was super expensive because they're low print run. The full end of Transformers, which are super expensive because they're low print run. God, there was just so many keys. First Guardians of the Galaxy, the new team, just a ton of stuff. And so the next day I came back with a price guide and I went through everything. I made a limp. I said, all right, it's got to be worth $10 or more, or I'm not picking it up. And I just.
Right.
They didn't adjust their price from the previous day after you left.
Nope. They didn't adjust. They said, no, that's the price we set. And they didn't, that wasn't their thing. They were just looking to clear them out. So, yeah.
How many years after you had sold your silver collection was that?
About 10 years.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay.
So did that event reinvigorate the joy of comics?
Yes, that got me back into comics. And so I started watching YouTube videos of comic collectors like Mint Hunter and whatnot, and seeing how that was just before COVID happened. And so I started seeing how the industry was going crazy, and I was kind of getting a little, disheartened. I was like, oh man, I'm never going to own some of these big books. And I hadn't gone back to a regular shop yet. And there was a little out of the way shop that I knew of. And I was like, all right, I'll go check it out on a weekend. And so I walked in, and I was like, I had just watched videos about people complaining that shops were like not honoring the price tags on the books, that you'd bring them up to the counter and they'd be like, oh, we have to look them up before we can sell them to you. And I was all right.
Which is Bush League, I think.
Yeah, I was like, well, this may happen, just preparing myself, right? And so I walked over, the first box was A, right? And it's Amazing Spider-Man. And I flip and I go, well, there's $2.98 for $3. There's $2.99 for $3. There's $3.01 for $3. And I'm like, I looked over and I go, are these prices right? And they go, oh no. And I go, okay, here it comes. They're going to tell me that they have to look them up. And they go, we're actually having a sale. Everything's $1 off right now.
Yeah, they didn't want to discourage you.
Yeah.
And so I went through and I picked up a ton of great books. And actually, when I went to check out, I asked the lady, I said, hey, these books are great. Yeah, you sure you want to sell them for this price? And she said, yeah, I know they're great books. And I bought a ton of the McFarlane run for that kind of price. And she said, but did you see a 300 in there? I said, no. And she said, did you see what's the one where Venom's on top of him?
316.
316. Did you see a 316? I said, no. He said, I peeled out the books that I needed to make the money off the collection. I put those other books in there for guys like you to get excited and come back. Is it going to work? I said, sure. So I've been coming back there pretty regularly. I go back and they sprinkle good books through there for great prices. So
still to this day.
Yeah.
So this Saturday I'm coming over, right? And
sure, we can go.
What store is that?
Well, I don't know if I want to give up my favorite hunting ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
I'll spill the beans later.
He'll spill he'll let you know. I'll let you know in the chat later on. I don't want everyone and their cousin going over.
I mean, I just think it's just a cool idea for a shop to do. I mean, they understand they're not going to put the ASM 300 in it, but they can sacrifice a few of the smaller ones. That's great. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and they don't. Their main thing is, so this will kind of give some people some clues. They don't do just comics. They do Magic. They do all this other stuff, and so their main bread and butter is Magic. So they didn't really care too much about the comics, and I started looking around because I would go in and I would trade Magic to them, and then pick up comic books, right? And I've done a whole little video series on my channel about like how to maximize your collection without spending a whole lot of money. So trade your assets that you don't really care about, or that you are in other ways that you have to make money. I got to do a video coming up about doing artwork. I did some artwork for my boss's distillery, and he gave me $1,000, and I was able to turn around and use that on comic books, which I wouldn't have had that money to use on comic books. So. But I was trading with them, and I looked up on the wall, and they had picture frames on the wall, which I hadn't noticed before. And I looked, and I go, "Does that say autographed by Stan Lee?" And she goes, "Yeah." And it was like a Fantastic Four, like I want to say 18, and then a 22, and then a Silver Surfer, the last issue with the Silver Surfer on by Stan and Jack.
Yeah,
really nice, great. And I'm looking at him, I go, "Does that say $100?" So yeah, that's what it says. I said, "Can I look at it closer? Can I take all of those?"
It just really also makes you think, like, I when we get inside our comic bubble hobby world, like we think that it's this hobby is so big and blah blah blah, but it really, especially when you compare it to something like Magic, like we are a blip on the radar compared to like Magic, compared to Pokemon, things like that.
Sports cards, a lot of that kind
exactly,
of stuff. Yeah.
Right. And so like when you say the shop, like they don't, comics, whatever, like I totally get that. And like,
well, they know comics, but it wasn't what turned for them. It wasn't what made the money for them. And he said those comics, those Stan Lee signed books have been up there for almost 10 years at that same price, and nobody said a thing. And I go, and looking at them, I was like, well, people probably didn't think they were available because they're in the picture frame and everything else. But I was like, heck yeah. So I was able to score, I think, probably a good at least 7 or 8 books signed by Stan. It turned out that Stan had come through in the mid '90s and done a signing. It used to be if you paid for his airfare and a place for him to stay, Stan would come out and do a signing almost anywhere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
if you know that when you had a shop, you could have done that too.
Yeah. My big one that I almost did, I did Michael Turner. They had the Fathom World Tour, and in order to do that, you had to order 1,000 copies of Fathom #1. And I ordered 1,000 copies of Fathom #1. We were signed up. We were on the T-shirts and said the name of my store on the back of the T-shirt. And it was about a month before he was supposed to show up, and they found out that he had cancer.
Oh.
And that was just the end of that. And so Diamond refunded all the money for all of the books. They were super cool about it. Turner wrote a letter and apologized. And I'm like, dude, you're sick and dying. I'm not gonna be upset about that. I mean, but
yeah. Okay, so then go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was gonna ask back to the idea of selling. These people are selling items because it's not exactly like their big wheelhouse, and they may even know how much they're worth, but they're willing to get rid of them for something else, right? So whether that's probably not even money motivated, right? Like in the case of that other comic book store, it was to retain customers, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Like when I was selling stuff for comics, I knew how much some of these sports cards that I had were worth, but they just had been sitting around and I didn't really care about them. So I was willing to, hey, whatever the cheapest, I can sell it right now for, or whatever it can just go for. Like I'm willing to take not the maximum. But when it comes to selling comics, I tend to be like, it's harder for me to let go of those at not a fair market value, right?
I think I've kind of like flipped to that, like where like more of like the Silver Age books and the Golden Age books that I pick up, I'm more like, okay, I want to hang on to those. I want to, unless I'm going to upgrade, like you're saying, I want to hang on to them and try to. Whereas back in the day, I was just more like, a buck's a buck. Got to move what you got to move. So.
Mm-hmm. And I do have another question about. Oh, sorry, Rohan, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say just kind of a related story. It's funny too. Like when you have comics, you have Magic, you have Pokemon. Oftentimes, you'll find people that switch between the hobbies. And so, for instance, like one time, the LCS that I went to up here, I walked in, and at the same time, this guy walked into this short box with this whole Bronze Age run of Batman, and at the end of the day, like I was there. I watched Jeff at the time, the owner, kind of go through the box. And I want to say he like totaled it up and it was like, he's like, I can give you $5,000 in value essentially for this. Or I don't remember what the number is. Right. But instead of paying him cash, he literally gave him 2 Magic cards because the guy was a Magic player.
Right.
And Jeff at the time, he's like, I got those Magic cards for free. Like someone just brought them and dropped them off. So
right. That's the magic, the quote unquote magic of being a store owner is like, and then like, okay, so let's say somebody comes in and they want to trade me $100 book for $100 box of cards. Well, that $100 box of cards, I only paid $55 for, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm immediately getting that discount. Plus, then you're going to also tell them, well, all right, if I'm going to buy a book that's $100, I'm going to give you half, because I've got to make a profit. So you're immediately going to profit again because you're, that's just the magic of being the store owner. You're going to have to,
Yeah, and I ended up getting my Batman 227 and 232 from that short box. So I was like, this is a score for me because I was there, and he was like, all right, you can get these for deals. Like, sweet, like let's go.
Yeah, I always gave people more in trade than I did in cash. I was like, I'd rather give you something that I've acquired somewhere else than give you cash.
And that works out well if there's someone that had, like I said, switched between one of these hobbies and you had this and your main business is that, like you easily would happily.
Well, and I gotta tell you, like I'm saying, so you start out with your one $10 card and somebody wants to trade you for it, they got to bring you 2 $10 cards. So now you've got 2 $10 cards. Now they have people, and it just pretty soon you've paid nothing for almost anything you've got. When you, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, there's good stuff and stuff you want to hang on to, but in the grand scheme of things, you profited and profited and profited and profited.
But that's not what you're going to do to me when we trade.
This week. I'm going to trade straight up with you, buddy.
Go ahead, Dan. No.
I was hesitant to ask this because it could shift the conversation about economically speaking, because I was thinking about how you went through selling your entire collection when times were really hard, and then
and I was over a barrel. I had to do it like that, and that's hard to do. It's liquidity. So
yes, and
you were there. A lot of people will compare, like they say, are comics a good investment? Well, no, not if you need to be liquid and have the money immediately. It's very hard to liquidate that stuff and get a fair price for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
over the long haul, if you want to sit on them and be able to take your time and move them, then yes. But if you get in a bind, you have to have an emergency fund. You got to be responsible with your collecting.
For sure. So nowadays, that's what I was going to ask you, how you feel now, accumulating books, willing to spend money again on books. I know like times have been, we're decent, right, economically for some people. And that's what we were spending extra money on, right? And then now in the situation that we're in and not really knowing where it's going to go, how do you do you feel comfortable still spending a lot of money on a book? And
so
the lessons that you learned since last time that happened.
So one thing I will tell you is that the money that you're going to make on something, I think I'm going to steal this from, I think it was Swagaloss. I heard the money you're going to make on something is made when you buy it. So you saw me at a show. What was I doing?
Yeah, you would ask pretty much if they would go almost like 60% or 50% sometimes. Yeah, on
right, because you've got it. If you're going to try to, and I want to build into that if I have to move these books, at some point, I'm not going to be losing money. So,
that's right.
I
I don't know how you did it, but you had a way of not offending anybody when you would ask them that. You know, like,
well, yeah, and a lot of times, if I felt like I was going to offend them, I would say that right up front. I would say, I don't want to offend you, so I don't think I really want to give you an offer. I am interested in that book, and they would be like, "No, just tell me what you're going to offer me. I'm not going to be offended." And I said, "All right, you said you're not."
Yeah, and sometimes they would just do a okay, you know.
Yeah,
right
or that. But 99 times out of 10, what they do? They either counter offered or said okay, right?
Counter offer pretty close, or
and I do think that's a good lesson too, because not to mention, like, in this comic book world, like, there's always going to be another one, right? Like, it's not like you had the chance to buy X-Men 1, you didn't get it, and now you'll never have that opportunity again. Like, no, if you really, if you you're going to have that opportunity essentially multiple times if you want it, or whatever the book is. Like that.
I mean, how many times have we seen in our chat thread Marvel Spotlight, or you know, it's now when you're talking about some Golden Age books, that can be different. Some Golden Age books you don't see come up for 10, 20 years, you won't see one, and then it'll finally pop up. Now that's a different thing. But
that's so amazing to me that some of these Silver Age books that are $10,000 or whatever are easy to come by. It's like, it's the truth, but it's taken me so long to kind of realize.
I mean, I think a good example of that actually is Hulk 181. It's a Bronze Age book.
Yeah,
there are 16,000 copies of Hulk 181 plus on the CGC census. That's not counting the thousands of raw ones that we still see every day. And
so
that's the biggest book I've ever wanted in my life.
It's not a rare book, right? But how many people out there are holding on to 10, 20, 30 copies of that? How many guys, how many investors,
sure.
right? So then it becomes a rare book because so many people are hoarding it.
Hold on now. Thank you for bringing that up. How much is it that, and how much is it that the demand is so high?
I think it's no. I do think Brian is correct in the sense that there. I mean, like Jeff, the Golden Age Guru, for example, had a video where he's like, "I have 50,
like 30 or 50.
50 Hulk 181s," and he graded them all. I don't know if he still has them. I'm sure he probably sold them. He's a dealer, but like there are. I mean, and to be perfectly frank, there are people that have this same kind of thing with even the Golden Age books. There are people, and there are collections, and I've said this in our thread. There are in my opinion, there are about to be some crazy collections coming out in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, because you have this boomer generation of baby boomers that are not to be sound morbid, but they are passing away, and a lot of these guys had money. A lot of these guys had collections from way back in the day, and there's gonna be some things like, for example, when we had Vince, the founder of Comic Connect, on here. I asked him, I said, the highest graded AF-15 is at 9.6. There's a restored 9.8, but an unrestored highest grade is a 9.6. I said, do you think there's a chance that eventually there'll be a 9.8? And he was like, yeah, there is a chance that like soon there'll be one that comes out that could be a 9.8. Absolutely. And like, I think there are people, like, for example, we've talked about the feed on Instagram, Anna is Love. I just shared it to you. She's got that Chamber of Chills 19, that like classic pre-core, where she's holding that like glass, and she has she's a picture on her Instagram feed. She has like a bunch of them. Or 9 of them. I don't know what it is. Some crazy number. She's got 3 Batman ones. They're all ungraded. So those aren't on the census. Like,
There's a lot, I'm sure, that just haven't been like discovered by the public yet.
Yeah. And so like Hulk 181, take that, and it's, well beyond that. That being said, everyone that's a collector, for the most part, wants a Hulk 181 in their collection, and hence why the value stays up there. And you're always going to be able to find buyers for that book. So it's a combination of both, I think.
Right. And it's such a new market still, even though we, like the trading has happened, how many years, like 40, 50 years or something, that it's been kind of popular to collect and trade comics since like the 80s or 70s, right? So
I don't know, yeah.
So it's a pretty new market, generally speaking, right, as far as collectibles go, because it's not like super mature. So we're still learning, about what the worth is, right, of some of these books.
Yeah. And I also just do think too, like, I'm totally with you, like, Brian, like when I go to a show, when I go to a store, even when I buy a comic off Instagram, like, unless it's something I know that's priced so well that if I don't jump on it, I'm gonna lose it. I always throw an offer out there. right?
Yeah.
And because it's like the worst they can say is no. They say no, or they counter, like you said. And then, you may work like, again, at the end of the day, like if you miss out, like, good chance are you'll find it again. But like oftentimes, like, and also just like you were just describing, right? It may be $1,000 book. They may have gotten it for $100, $200
or nothing. Yeah.
Right. And so like your $700
ahead.
offer could still be a big profit for them.
Right. So Dan and I went to Frankenstein Comic Swap Meet, and at the end of it, we added up all the books that we got and what we paid, what they were asking and what we paid for them. And Dan was like, you got like 35 to 40% off on almost every book.
I'm pretty sure you paid 50 or 60%. Yeah. Of what? And the prices everybody was asking was pretty much fair market, like prices, like everything was like,
right.
It was good. Like nothing was overpriced. Nope, lost it.
Okay. so jumping back into like what got me back into comics.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Let's like, we kind of, yeah.
So shortly after that, I went out and I started doing hunting. I would go out and hit garage sales or junk shops and that kind of stuff. And my spidey sense was tingling about this little antique strip mall along the side of the freeway. So I went in there and I started going through all these shops and nope. And I'm like, I guess I was wrong. And I'm walking back to my car and there's this guy in the back of a SUV rummaging through comic boxes. And I'm like, oh, hey, that's what I was here in town for. And he says, you can look when I'm done. I was like, oh, he goes, they belong to the lady inside. Well, there was one shop that hadn't been open. And so I walked inside and the lady said, oh, yeah, I've had these at home. We have a lot of books here in the store. Feel free to look around. Well, all the stuff in the store was your typical junk shop kind of stuff, way overpriced. And I watched as that guy brought in a big, huge stack of Silver Age books and she sold them to him for $1 or $2 a book. And I was just like, oh. And she says, well, I know he probably got a lot of the stuff you wanted, but you're welcome to go look back out in the truck. So I started looking. Well, she had a big, and I had seen him, like there was a big plastic bag of magazines. He just threw it to the side. There was like a mail, like one of those square mailer boxes, not the rectangle ones, the square ones. And he just kind of opened it and threw that to the side. So I went, okay. So I opened it up and it was like G.I. Joe number, I think it was number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7. And I'm like, huh. And G.I. Joe was my thing. I collected it when I was a kid. And so I go back inside and I go, so just so I don't get myself too much of a hole, what are we talking about per book? She goes, oh, since he's already gone through everything, like $1 a book. And I said, oh, that's cool. There's a box of G.I. Joe out there that I used to collect that when I was a kid. I'm really excited to see that. And she goes, oh God, that box of G.I. Joe, I've had that for like 15, 20 years. She goes, you can have that for $15. And I'm like, there was 85 issues of G.I. Joe. And I was going through and they were all sequential and I hit 20 and then 21.
That's the silent issue, right?
The silent issue, yeah. So
that looks really like it's in really good condition too.
Yeah, it's in pretty good shape. Newsstand. So
very nice.
Yeah, so I was like, holy cow, hell yeah. And so I bought those. I bought a bunch I was looking at what was it? I think they were Eerie magazines and they were priced, the cover price on them was 35 cents. And I'm like, when were magazines 35 cents? I'm like, all right, yeah, I just bought all of them that she had. Well, they ended up being like, $100 a piece value for these books. I was just like, all right, that's cool. So I bought these books and she says, oh, so do you know Joe? And I said, Joe? And she says, yeah, I assume you live in the area. I said, yeah. She goes, well, yeah, Joe, he has an antique store in his house. He used to have a booth here, but he goes, by invite only, will let people come to his house and buy books. And I was like, oh. She's like, well, I'll refer you. She's like, and I'll give you his phone number. And I was like, okay. And so I got the number and I was like, I kind of tapped myself out with buying the stuff I bought. So I was just going to go, all right. So a couple of weeks went by and I'm looking at the guy's phone number and okay, I'll give him a call. And I called him up and I said, hey, the lady at this antique store gave me your number. He says, oh yeah, she talked about you. He says, you're welcome to come on out. He says, but I should tell you, I don't have any of that new stuff here. And I was like, Oh, okay. No new stuff. That's cool. And so I'm thinking like he doesn't have any, Copper Age or newer, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. And I walk into his house, and he says, "Yeah, when Marvel came out in '63, that was just too weird for me, so I cut it off there." He's like, "Everything in my collection is 1963 and back." So he's got early Silver Age, Golden Age, Platinum Age.
Wow.
Just crazy stuff. So I have a stack of books that I picked up from him. So this is
Oh, when did you go back there last?
it's been a while, and I need to go back. Yeah, but this is Action Comics 111 from 1947.
Oh, very cool.
We got Adventure Comics number 91 with Sandman firing a bazooka at the Nazis.
Wow.
1944. And that says it is the last Kirby Sandman issue. So
wow.
Huh.
This one is in super high grade. This is Adventure Comics number 122 from 1947.
Wow.
He turned my Tommy gun into a candy cane.
That's right. Superboy, Super Magician, Presto. That's what it says on the cover. Batman number 34.
Oh, yes, love so the sick. Yellow. Yeah,
from
love
1946.
Very cool.
Detective Comics number 110. This is when they reveal that Alfred is from London, 1946.
Oh.
And so Batman and Robin are there working with Scotland Yard.
Dan, you need to get referred to this place, Dan.
Detective Comics number 144.
Life, yeah.
Yeah, no, people have asked me, they're like, "You need to take me." I said, "I'll put a blindfold on you and take you there, I guess."
He's got the comic shops, he's got the honey hole.
Yeah.
That's right. This is affectionately known as the honey hole. Green Hornet number 18. This is a Schomburg cover. You got the Green Hornet there with the damsel strapped to the bomb.
Very cool.
This one is in super high grade. This one I'm really excited to have. This is Sensation Comics number 45.
Oh, nice. And Wonder Woman's right there on the cover, obviously.
Yeah, from 1945.
Wow.
And then we'll top it off with World's Finest number 15.
Another yellow. Love the yellow.
Great. The recreation cover.
Yeah. And Robin's like, who do I call? Do I call him out? Batman's gonna beat the crap out of me.
Yeah. What's funny is those World's Finest always have those recreation cards, and like the first appearance of Scarecrow is in a World's Finest. I can't remember the number, but on the cover,
right.
Batman, Robin, and Superman playing baseball.
Right. Yeah. And the intro of Scarecrow, the artwork on the splash page for the intro of Scarecrow is amazing.
Oh yeah, I only saw it recently because if you guys watch Ryan from Automatic Comics,
yeah, that's where I saw it.
Yeah, and he opened it up. He's like, "Let me show you." And I was like, "That is rad! Like, it's super cool."
Yeah, so that's kind of been another spark to get me interested in. When I had my shop, I never saw Golden Age stuff. It did not come into the store, and so just to be able to see that stuff on a regular basis, and this guy has he has stuff tucked away. Like I'll come in and he'll be like, "Oh, do you want to see a different box?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he'll start bringing out boxes and boxes of stuff, and I'm just like, "Oh my god!"
well, then talk to us though. Then, so you've showed us GI Joe books and you showed us these Golden Age books. What is your jam? Like, where is it? All in between, or like what are you like in terms of like collecting goals, collecting strategies? What are you?
So I need to make a list of collecting goals. So like I do pick up a lot of like this, all of that DC Golden Age stuff is not stuff that I am personally like attached to. It's neat, but and I picked it up for a really good price, so I figure that I can use it to pick up grails that I want to get later on. So I want to start picking up a lot of the big Marvel grails. I want to get a first Doctor Strange. I want to get a first Hulk. I want to get a first Thor, first Loki, that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, my financial where I'm at as far as work and bills and everything, I can only afford to put a few $100s aside every month towards a big book.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in that same boat as well. So,
but like I do a lot of flipping of other things or trading of things. So there's a store that I know the owner, and they don't deal in back issues at all. So once something becomes stale stock, after about 6 months, they just blow it all out. And so they call me up, and they're like, hey, do you want to pick up these boxes of comics, 200 comics in a box for, pennies on the dollar. And I don't know, pick up these boxes of stuff, and then I'll come home, start sorting through them, and Travis will come over, and Travis is trading me or buying books from me, and friends come over and they'll be going through, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's a $20 book. That's a $30 book. That's a $15 book. And I'm just like, if you give me $5 a book or $4 a book for everything you're taking, sweet. We're good. I don't care. They're like, but I'm getting all these other really great books that are, I don't care. Just take, as long as you pay me like about cover price or a little bit less, maybe.
Everyone wins. Everyone wins. I love it.
I'll bring cash.
Okay.
There you go. So talk to me about, when did you start your channel? What is your channel about? Tell me about that kind of thing.
So I started my channel in January of this year. And it's about just comic hunting, comic collecting, just sharing your love of comics with people. And then I eventually kind of wheeled into the whole idea of the hashtag comic book shout out, which you were saying you weren't really familiar with.
First off, let's start here though, real quick. Bigby McFly, the comic guy. Where did you come up with that name?
So when I was in high school, kids would call me Big B. So I was like,
Brian,
Big B.
Yeah, Big B. So there was also the character Big B Wolf in Fables, the Big Bad Wolf. So I kind of like that Big B, Big Bad Wolf. There's also a Dungeons and Dragons character named Big B, who is famous, has a lot of famous spells in the spell compendiums and stuff for Dungeons and Dragons. So I was like, okay, Big B's a cool name. And then I have a buddy, Comics with Bueller is a friend of mine. I've known him going way back, and so I was like,
I don't know him, but I know of him.
So I was like, well, if we ever do something together, it'd be cool if it was Bueller and McFly, So I was like, all right, Bigby McFly, that's it. So and then I'm like, all right, Bigby McFly, the comic guy. It kind of rolls off the tongue. So
okay, yeah. And so now let's talk about, I always hear you talk about comic book shout out, the comic book shout out video. What is going on here? I hear it. I don't know what it is. Dan, I'm not sure if you know what it is, but I hear it talking about a lot.
Let the man speak.
So the whole idea of the comic book shout out video was kind of, what's your favorite YouTube channel's favorite YouTube channel? Who do they like to watch? And do they like to watch some new people, or are there new people out there that a lot of people aren't getting exposure to? And so I came up with this idea of, hey, let's all just share channels, shout them out, and talk about the channels that we like and why we like them, and do these little, short 3 to 5 minute, sometimes even like 60 seconds. Some people do like a short about them, just to get these people connected into the community and just kind of grow the community more, so we're all more interconnected. And that's kind of led me to be, friends with Mike from Lunch Money Comics, and Brandon from Mon Comics. That's how I got to know them. Mr. Akins from What's on the Comic Rack. All these guys are just guys that I've met through this whole idea of doing the shout out movement, and we've become just great friends. And so it's cool, and I think it's working to build the community and make it bigger and get people more interconnected.
I love it. Are there? I mean, can I ask? Are there some channels that you want to shout out right now that me or Dan may not know about?
Let's see. What's the name of Jackpot Comics Talk is one that we just had shouted out recently. Brandon shouted her out. She's great. She does she's only got, I think, like 45 subs right now, but she does some really cool content. Her favorite character is Mary Jane Watson. She cosplays as Mary Jane.
All right. Cool that's the thing is, what's great, to be perfectly honest, I've almost, outside of I'm a big sports guy, so I do listen to a lot of sports podcasts. But outside of that, I've kind of dumped everything else. And now it's strictly comic book and comic book card related podcasts. So the more channels I know about, the better. So, okay, I'm going to look her up. Dan, what about you? I mean, you got any channels that you want to let us know about that maybe we may not know?
Oh man, I wasn't prepared to shout out channels. Let's see. I mean, I watch all the regular, folks that have the high subscription counts, but and I'm learning so many more channels from you guys. Like I just discovered, no. The answer is no. I don't have any. I don't have any to.
Who did you just discover?
I have to go through my subscription list and take a look.
So like 22 Comics, he's a great channel. Let's see, who else am I thinking of? God, there's a ton of just amazing channels. Mr. Akins from What's on the Coming Back he's criminally undersubscribed. He's up for an award for the Comic Book Community Awards for Best Unknown Channel.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's going to be on in January, so a little bit from now.
So definitely sub him up if you guys can. Gosh, who else? Geek Out with Roscoe and TM Nerdy. They do a great thing, a live show every Monday night called Between the Lines. It's a live art stream, so people are drawing. You're drawing and talking and answering questions from TM Nerdy asks the questions and fields questions from the audience, and Roscoe draws as well as the guest, and then the audience also are called the in-betweeners is kind of their name, and they submit artwork and then they show everybody's art on it. It's all a theme. So like this last week, the theme was iconic horror characters. So everybody did their own, and a lot of them are humorous, and a lot of times it's pretty cool. It's a great channel. So yeah. TM Nerdy and Geek Out with Roscoe, they're great guys.
Yeah, and I want to add this to put the public pressure on here. So we're on. We've mentioned this thread. Oh, we talked about last week with Dan. It's been now self-titled The Illuminati, which make fun of us all you want. But on there's me, Brian, Dan is on there, Mike from Lunch Money, JP, my co-host, Ryan from Collecting Casually, Ryan from Colossus Collector, Travis from Comics Limited, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so we all have channels except Dan. And so this week we were talking about Dan, what he should do is make a comic channel that just parodies all of our videos. And I would love it. I would freaking love it. Like
homage.
Yeah, homage. No, but I want him to straight up clown on us.
I don't know, man. I am afraid of the backlash on that one. Do you see? I mean,
I wouldn't be worried about it.
You have full license to make fun of the absolute game of nerds and parody anything that we've done. Like, I would love that.
I guess the thing is, as long as I ask for permission first.
You have our permission already. So
nobody should be. That gives me license to totally eviscerate
you. Did you see the video that Mr. Akins did where it was like, what if comic book YouTubers played Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah,
I have not seen that.
Oh, he just clips little snippets of people saying things out of context, and it's hilarious. There's a part where he's like, all right, you round the corner and there's a band of giant ferocious orcs, and then he clips Alan, and Alan's like, I would have called them dirty savages. He's like, all right, Alan, we can call them dirty savages.
Oh no, but I want you to send me that link afterwards. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
He's working on a part 2 from what I understand.
Yes, he is working on a part 2, and then I keep sending him snippets or like things that I remember from D&D games where conversations just went awry. And so I'm like, oh, this would be hilarious. This would be hilarious.
So after you guys have introduced me to, Comics Limited and these other channels, more channels I'm starting to notice are popping up under the suggestions for me. And it's like, there are so many comic channels that I had no idea existed.
Yeah.
And they may have like 10,000 followers or something. And I just
that's the whole idea. Like you can shout out huge channels or small channels because a lot of times, like I shouted out Lunch Money, and still he got people that didn't know who he was. I shouted out Mint Hunter. I'm sure he got a few people who didn't know who he was. They're huge, but but it doesn't hurt. So
yeah, no, I love it. No, that's awesome. Well, that's great. Kind of moving on, Brian. Talk to me about your art, though. Like we've kind of brushed into it. I know on our thread you've shared pieces that you've drawn. The other day you were saying like this is a piece that you published. I don't know anything really about your art, so talk to me about that.
So yeah, I've been published in a few things. I published some books myself out of high school. There was a magazine called Dark Discoveries that I was published in, which is a internationally distributed horror magazine. So I did some covers and stuff for that. And then I just do a lot of drawings. And then I also do for the hashtag comic book shout outs, I do artwork for people on their requests. So like there's a sample of that's Phoenix.
Yeah, that's rad. How long does that piece take you to do?
I've worked on this on and off. So like I know I've done live stream work on this for like maybe 4 hours live streaming it. So but here's one that was like more of a quick sketch. This is probably maybe an hour and a half. This is Spider-Man.
Oh, so sick.
Yeah. So talk to me about, you can either talk about the Spider-Man piece or that Phoenix piece. What is your process like? If you're gonna do a piece for someone, do they give you the character, or is it all up to you? And then when you have the character, how do you decide what they're doing? Like, kind of take me through that process. We haven't had an artist on here.
So for the shout out video stuff, yeah, like Mr. Akins told me he wanted to have Werewolf by Night versus Dracula, and he asked me to put the trade dress on there. So I went ahead and took. I actually had to sign up for a what's the big auction house?
Heritage.
I had to sign up for a Heritage account so that I could get access to high-res scans of original artwork with the trade dress, and then I go in and I take out the original artwork, and then just leave the trade dress in, and then print that off, and then draw my piece on there.
Yeah.
With the trade dress. So,
okay, so
he
requested the character.
Yeah, so he requested those characters, and then I just started drawing. I was like, all right, well, I'm like, what's the most ridiculous thing I could think of the Werewolf by Night doing? And so I'm like, he's gonna tear the crucifix off the top of a church and come flying down off the top of his people with this cross. He's gonna bludgeon Dracula with this cross, and then I'll have Dracula waiting with a silver dagger poised to stab him as he's coming down, right? So
awesome.
And you're drawing this just completely freehand. You're not like looking at anything. This is all just right out of your head, and you're.
Yeah, my wife and I just had this conversation. She said that there was somebody they were interviewing recently that said not everyone can visualize things in their head. So like you say something like picture a fire truck, and they were like they can't picture things. And she's like, and then there's other people who can do just okay, I can picture a fire truck. And then there's people who are artists who like when I envision something, be it a body or a human body or a vehicle or whatever, I can 360 spin it around and look at it from every angle in my head. Like, how would it look going this way? How would it look going that way? I can do that just by.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I haven't really done it since I was a kid. Like, if you were to ask me to just like freehand something, I mean, we're talking like the equivalency level of just beyond stick figures here, right? However, like I can look at something and almost draw it identically. Like, so growing up, I used to love just like I collected, those 90s Marvel cards, and I'd be like, oh, this Beast card, I'm gonna draw, and I would draw Beast, but like I'd be looking at the card and I could recreate that card, but like I cannot just do it out of my own mind.
Yeah, like if I'm gonna draw and create like a new pose that I hadn't seen, I'd need to like set up my action figure or something, like look at my hand in a certain perspective to think about what that would look like. Yeah.
And a lot of times, like I drew this Wolverine one. This one. I drew this one live on a live stream, and drawing it was really. Were you there, Dan, when I was doing this?
Yeah, I popped in for a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was real rough. It was like I was having a hard time with the hand, and a lot of times when I'm drawing, it's almost like sculpting clay, where I'm kind of like I'm putting down lines, and I'm like, nope, not like that. Gotta adjust that. Nope, gotta adjust that, and
you just kind of like start with a lighter line, I'm guessing, and then just finish.
Well, I had a real firm, hard line in here. If you were looking at this close, you can see his claws, and his hand is facing the other direction, and everything else. And I was like, no, I'm not happy with that, and I just reworked it. And Tina, who's my admin on my channel, she's like, I'm like, this piece of paper is about to go in the garbage. She's like, no, don't throw it away. Keep working. So I fixed it and made it work.
Do you
Just
do you
like
stop
all
at
artists, I'm
do you
sure.
stop at pencils, or do you ink? Do you color?
Most of the time when I do inking or coloring, I do digitally. So most of my stuff's digitally. Because undo is my friend. I things that are real permanent kind of scare me. Like I've ruined a lot of pieces when you go and do. And I suppose I need to get up with the times and start getting. They have whiteout um, pens now that you can draw with. So like if I did something that I didn't like, I could go in and just kind of adjust and tweak it. So
Oh yeah, try that on some low risk sketches of yours first, right?
right,
See how it
right.
feels.
Yeah, so the horror one I was telling you the other night was the horror characters. Let me show you the one I did for that. Oh, you guys would probably like that one too. Here's this isn't the horror characters one. Here you go. This is Hulk versus. We decided it was Doctor
Oh
Doom.
wow,
Oh, nice.
wow, that line work is awesome.
So he's getting blasted there.
Now, Brian, I have to ask because he's my favorite character. Have you ever drawn Silver Surfer?
Yeah, I've drawn Surfer quite a few times.
Oh yeah,
I don't think I have any examples to show you, but I have
Oh.
drawn him. And then
Cool.
here's the one I did for the horror was Cthulhu.
That's great.
So,
Nice. Yeah, that's excellent.
You know, all
Rising
I've
out of the
seen, I
depression
think,
there.
on your channel is either the it's called like Reels, right? Where it's or is that I'm mixing up Instagram.
That's Instagram is
Reels
Reels.
is
Yeah.
Instagram.
Where you do like the short videos, shorts, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube.
And,
Shorts.
Yeah, I do one of those every day.
Yeah, you're really good at syncing the music up with your show, like just the type of music that you choose is like a great choice for
I try to do that, and then I try to do like dramatic cuts where it cuts between the issues because I do a lot of like different just covers of comics. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, you're good at doing that. But I've only seen those and your lives. I haven't actually. So when I heard you say that you have content about collecting, I want to check out. Is that like some of your older videos, or do you just do that?
Yeah, it's one of my older ones is the one about it says how to grow your collection without spending all of your green, and it's got poison ivy on as the thumbnail.
Okay.
Yeah.
As like a funny aside story that's kind of related. So I recently had a video unboxing, and it was some comic books that I got from JP. And so JP is also kind of into the drawing kind of thing. He used to do it as a kid. He doesn't do it like you do now. But anyway, so I got a couple books from him, and he sent it to me in this Gemini mailer. And so I unboxed it in this video, blah, blah, blah. JP messaged me. He's like, because I didn't talk about it on the video. He's like, hey, didn't I draw like a cool Batman figure or something on the mailer for you? And I was like, no, I don't think so. You must have mixed up the boxes. Like there was no drawing. And then like, sure enough, like on the thumbnail, I have me holding up the box. You can see the drawing. And I just like never noticed it. And he was like so upset that I did not notice this Batman he drew for me.
You just like threw it away.
Yeah, well, I mean, I saved the Gemini mailers, so it's like, why would I not?
Yeah,
because you can reuse them. So I'm sure it's there. I just did not notice it, did not acknowledge it, it just didn't even like.
Yeah. The first one that I sent to Brandon at Comics, he sent me the thumbnail. He's like, "What do you think of the thumbnail?" And I go, "That's great. Can you take my address out of it, though?" He's like, "Oh, I think it was Brandon. One of I think it was either Brandon or Travis. Somebody that was holding up something that had my address on it." I was like, "No, don't do that."
Come on over.
Yeah. But I have a funny story about when I had my shop. I got a phone call, and I was down in the Vancouver store, and Fallout Boy was in Portland.
Okay.
And I got a phone call, and they said, hey, the guys are here in Portland, and they're missing their comics, and this is their manager, and they've asked me if I gave you a list of the books that they read, if you'd be able to pull some books for them. And I was like, sure, and yeah, I'd be happy to. And so I pulled a big stack of books for them, and he came in with the money for it, and I threw in a bunch of books. I said, well, looking at what their tastes are, these are some things that I would suggest, and I'm going to throw them in on the house. Here you go. Hopefully, this is my brush with fame that they can maybe like these books that this comic shop owner from Vancouver introduced them to. And a couple hours later, I get a phone call back, and he shows up he says, "Hey, how much longer are you going to be there?" And I said, "Oh, about an hour." He goes, "Okay, don't close." Don't close. I was like, "All right." Yeah, and he shows up and he's got a big old 11 by 17 photo of the band signed by all of them. And he's like,
Very
"The guys
cool.
wanted you to have this. They're really happy that really thankful you threw in those extra books and everything."
Oh, that's
So I
sweet.
That's
still have
great.
that.
That's a great story.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, this has been a ton of fun, Brian. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. That was my pleasure.
Something that I really like about being on, a video or just talking with you, Brian, is like I'll have a book that I was supposed to show, just completely unprepared. Like I've read this before, I don't remember, and you'll just be like, "Oh, that is this. That's what's happening here in this storyline. These are the artists." You're just so knowledgeable about just a huge spectrum of comic books, and
I'm a wealth of useless information.
well, it is. You are an encyclopedia for me, sir. So thank you.
Oh, appreciate that, man.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And Dan, thank you for joining us.
Sure,
in a last-minute pinch. This was awesome. Yeah, and a lot of fun. But yeah, again, thanks for coming on, and we will absolutely have to have you back on again, get the update on where things are at, and obviously we will talk personally on our thread.
Tell us about your third comic shop that you open up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to, I think we're gonna have to all get together for the Frankenstein thing. It's quarterly. So.
We'll definitely.
Yeah, that'd be dope. That'd be dope. And then I don't know, are either of you guys? There's a Grit City is in 2 Saturdays in Tacoma. I don't know if that has something that you guys have thought about coming up to, but
I hadn't even heard of it. What is it?
It's just it's a smaller kind of Comic Con called Grit City Comic Con. I don't know anything about it. I actually heard about it through Dave from West Coast Avengers, and so I'm gonna go check it out. Might as well. So
Dan, you want to tell him how much it costs to get into the Frankenstein Comic Con?
Yeah, $5 if you go in an hour early, and $1 after the first hour.
$1.
I would do the $5 though. You got to get the access to the good stuff.
Yeah, we got in there. We went in early, but
anything with it. I paid $5.
Yeah,
I wasted $4, man.
No, I saw you going through those 50-cent bins. You got those signed Old Man Logans for 50 cents.
That's true. I did get those. Yeah. Now they're just somewhere in there.
Well, then, real quick before we close out here, Brian, why don't you tell everyone where your channel is, what it's called, Instagram handles, all that good stuff, so people can follow you and all that good stuff.
So Bigby McFly, the comic guy, on YouTube, and Bigby McFly on Instagram.
All right, and then we have Dan's X-Men Comics on Instagram, and soon to be parody channel coming up. I can't wait. So we'll let you know when that comes out as well.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anytime you need another guest, let me know.
Absolutely. Everyone, thanks for joining us. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. I'll put Brian's and even Dan's, where you can follow them and all that good stuff in the description. So sum them up, and the guys we talked about, sub those guys up. Everyone, appreciate everyone checking us out. And with that, we will see you later. Peace out.